Okay, Shoma, we are live now. So Shoma, are
You
you
have
ready?
not started recording.
No, I'll start. Are you ready?
Yes,
Everything? You have two bios and questions and all.
yes, I have it.
Uh, okay, then start. I'll start recording. Sir, should I start?
Yes, please. No problem.
Welcome everyone to Bioingene webinar. This is our 64th webinar in the series, and we are very happy getting huge responses. About 1,800 people already registered, and those are registered. Please use that same email ID during the feedback submissions, which is I will provide a link for feedback submission after the webinar. We'll do the webinar as our regular pattern, which first going for the presentation, then for the discussions session, and ultimately we collect all the questions from YouTube chat box and we'll ask to speakers. Today we have a two renowned speakers whom I will introduce, and I'm assured that feedback link will be given at the end of the webinar. So please don't only ask the questions related to today's webinar in the YouTube chat box. And YouTube is the only way to view our webinar. So there is no request. We are not entertaining any request for the Zoom link. Soma, please start today's webinar.
Hello and welcome to Bioengine webinars. Bioengine is a non-profit organization created to promote plant research worldwide. This is a platform from which plant scientists can present their research to the world. We hope future scientists can gain perspective and inspiration by listening to the esteemed plant researchers talk about their scientific accomplishments and their thoughts on building the future of plant sciences. We are grateful to our great guest speakers to have accepted our invitation to share their research insights with us. We're also thankful to you, the viewers of our Bioengine family, for your interest in Bioengine webinars, your constant support, and your appreciation. We have received a huge response through the registrations for today's webinar. You can register for more such webinars through our website, bioengine.com, and social media pages. You are live viewing this webinar and you can watch it again later on Bioengine YouTube channel. So please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of our live events. After attending today's talk, you can apply for a certificate of participation via the feedback link, which will be provided in the YouTube chat after the presentation. Please type in your questions related to today's talk in the YouTube chat box for the Q&A session. The topic for today's webinar is De-novo domestication of crops for salt-affected environments. Our guest speakers today are Dr. R.K. Singh and Dr. D.A. Lyra. Dr. R.K. Singh, the head of Crop Division and Genetics Section, International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, ICBA, Dubai, UAE. He is the head of this section and he joined in ICBA in November 2018. He leads research teams studying such crops as quinoa, barley, millets, cowpea, forages, trees such as date palm, and halophytes like Salicornia, among others. He started his career in 1986 as a scientist at the Agricultural Research Services of the Central Soil Salinity Research Institute in Karnal, India. He has risen through the ranks to become a principal scientist. In 2005, he moved to the International Rice Research Institute, or we call as IRI, as a rice breeder for salt-affected areas. He has worked in different capacities at IRI until 2018. He has served at IRI's Regional Plant Breeding Coordinator for Eastern Southern Africa based in Tanzania, and in that role, he coordinated rice breeding activities in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and Mozambique. From 2012 to 2016, he worked at IRI's headquarters as a rice breeder for problem soils and rain-fed lowlands of Southeast Asia, including Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. In 2016-2018, he led the trade development team at IRI, focusing on salinity, heat, and problem soils. In his past roles, Dr. R.K. Singh led the teams which developed and released more than 35 salt-tolerant rice varieties, including a basmati rice variety in India. He holds a PhD in plant breeding from the GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, Pantnagar, India. He is a fellow of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences, India, and the Mohammed bin Rashid Academy of Sciences, the UAE. He has published more than 125 research papers in international peer-reviewed journals and over 25 book chapters. We are highly honored that he could join us today. Our second speaker is Dr. D.A. Lyra. He's a Halophyte agronomist from the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, Dubai, UAE. She joined the ICBA as postdoctoral researcher in 2013. Prior to that, she had been on the postdoctoral fellowship at the Laboratory of Agronomy at the Agricultural University of Athens, where she was involved in the evaluation of barley genotypes for drought resistance and crop yield. She holds a PhD degree in plant science from the Agricultural University of Athens, Greece, and she has received scholarships and grants from the Hellenic Ministry of Educational Affairs, EU, the European Wheat Research Society, Arab American Frontiers, USAID, and private sectors. She has authored and co-authored over 50 publications, including a technical manual on principles of sustainable agriculture and water management, articles in peer-reviewed journals, conference papers, and research reports. We are very happy that she could join us today. I'm sure all the female scientists or budding scientists are very happy to see a fellow woman scientist in our webinar. We are highly honored to have you both for today's event. We will now start the presentation and I request Dr. R.K. Singh to start with his talk.
Thank you, Dr. Soma. So thank you for the nice introduction for me as well as Dr. CC. And it will be our honor to have a participation for the benefit of the different kind of like a spectrum of the scientists, the students, and the newcomers which are coming in the field of the science. So let me share the screen first. Hope you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So as you already mentioned that our topic is de-novo domestication of crops, specifically for the salt affected environments. So we are talking about the de-novo domestication, but we are focusing on the salt affected environments. When we talk about this, sorry.
You can minimize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the outlines for the topic will be like extent of marginal environments, because marginal and salt affected environment is one of the part of the marginal environments. So what are those marginal environments? And then agriculture biodiversity, how it can help or how it is helping us to develop some new plant varieties or plant crop varieties for the combating the salinity and other marginal environments. Key component of de-novo domestication and what are the pathways, example of domestication of crop for salt affected areas, and the nutritional profile, because this is very important. If they are there, but if they are not having the nutritional benefits, how we are going to utilize in our our daily life. The usefulness as nature positive solution, because we are also talking about the nature positive solution which are having the lowest carbon footprints. We can do that for the globe. And the summary. So when we talk about the extent of marginal environments, it's more than 21% of all land resources are marginal. When we say this is a biophysical marginality. So then when we talk about, because we are in the UAE is a rich country. So we don't say the marginality in terms of the social marginality, but we are talking about the biophysical marginality here. So it's around more than 20% are the marginal lands. Out of that, around half of that is around 1.12 billion hectare is affected by salinity globally. And the social dimension is that around 1.75 billion people live in the marginal regions. It means they are having the problem of getting the enough food and even the nutritional food also. And more than 820 millions are undernourished. That's the reason why we want to go for the something good for the marginal environments and which are nutritionally also very ample with the nutrients. So more food has to come from the marginal areas. Why I'm saying this one? Because in most of the cases, like whether you talk about the rice or wheat, almost we have reached to the plateau. And in many crops, the genetic gain is very, very meager. When we say very, very meager, means like the pace of the population increase is we are not meeting that increase in our food production. So we have to look for the something else. And another thing is that arable lands is shrinking, and we need only horizontal expansion. Arable land is shrinking means because of industrialization, because of some other things, because of encroachment of the agriculture area for the industries, housings, etc. So arable land is not like unlimited; it's shrinking. So what are the options from where we can get the food? It is only from the marginal lands. So there is no other option except utilize the marginal lands for the food security. Yes, you can develop the like marginal lands for the food production, but how? The challenge is the low carbon footprint. Because if we have to keep our planet healthy, we have to have the low carbon footprint. And then it is a challenge when we have to grow for the food, feed, and nutritional security with the low carbon footprint. There are two ways. Either grow desired crop in region by changing the external environment, but that affects nature adversely, because once you are changing the external environment like controlled environment system or protected agriculture, you are changing the external environment to grow the food, but that has the penalty on the carbon footprints. So second part is that grow diverse crops variety which can be grown in the natural environment without changing the external environments, and use least natural resources. So this is the one way which we always advocate as a nature positive and minimal carbon footprint solution. So once you do that one, it means you are favoring the planet to make it less hot or something like that. So minimal carbon footprint is the key word for the nature positive solution. If you talk about the salinity area, drought area, flood area, you name it, you will find something is there for every environment. Something is there. So there is a crop for almost every environment. And if you see that like more than around 500,000 plant species are identified on the planet, and in the literature, there is a huge diversity of the edible species. 30,000 has been known to be edible in that one. So something is there for every environment. But most important thing is that edible is good for the food as well as nutrition. So that we have to look into that. And only 6,000 out of 30,000 has been used as food in literature, also in history also. But if you go to the supermarket or maybe the farmer's fair or maybe the grain fairs, you will not find more than 150 crops as at one place. So they are cultivated in significant scale for the worldwide, but you will not find more than 150 crops. Why? Because we are not giving enough emphasis to the other crops. And unfortunately, only 3 or 4 crops like maize, wheat, rice, and potato, they are catering our calorific requirement of around 65% to 70%. This 4 crops: maize, wheat, rice, and potato. But the thing is that if we are growing that in every condition, is it healthy for the planet? No, because you are changing the environment to grow them, and that way you are going to have the high carbon footprint. So not every environment condition is ready to grow to rice, wheat, maize, and potato, and especially when climate is not conducive and resources are very limited. Why we say this one? Because everybody wants to, even in the very harsh environment, people want to grow rice, wheat, and maize and potato, and put the extra water, extra resources. So that way it is not healthy. So this food system, and why? Because these are the staple crop and people want this one to eat. And this food system is the main culprit for the carbon, greenhouse gases. So what we are doing, we are exploiting the built-in crop salt tolerance traits. Built-in salt tolerance is which are inherently salt tolerant, those crops which are looking for And ICWA's best nature positive solution is that to find out the crops which can be grown under those marginal environment or salt affected environment without having the external resources or much external resources. So when we say the de-novo domestication of salt-tolerant crops, actually it is nothing but it is the process of selectively breeding and adapting wild or semi-wild plant species to develop new crop varieties that can thrive in saline or highly saline areas. And this is as I mentioned, it is the best bet approach for the nature positive solution because this minimizes the carbon footprint. So what we are doing in this one, this is the key components. Identification of salt-tolerant species, we identify the salt-tolerant crop species or which can be grown under the salt-tolerant salinity affected area. Then look for the genetic diversity of the traits. Which traits you are looking for? Traits could be on the grain yield or maybe the nutritional quality. Those traits we can look for. Even the flowering also. We even height also. Then go for the breeding and selection. So this is a complete process. And once you go for the breeding and selection, go for the field trial and evaluation. And then scaling up for the delivery. So this is last component is very important for the upscaling or outscaling and delivery, because that is the place where the consumers are included in this domain. So pathways to deliver salt-tolerant crops, that could be intraspecific variation. This is what I mentioned. Intraspecific variation is when you are already selected crop, then what are the different varieties within that crop? So you can find out these are the varieties which are suited for this environment. Close crop wild relatives, if it is like that, and it can be grown under the conditions which are not conducive for the normal conditions. So if we can get some good crop wild relatives, and if it can thrive under the very high salinity condition, probably that is the one of the best answer. Or distant crop wild relatives. Because if you are having distant crop wild relatives, we can have some genetic tool to introgress those type of traits, which is from the distant crop wild relatives into the adapted one. And it could be through the yield-based selection, introgression, or the marker-assisted selection, genomic selection, and grafting also. Second is the domestication of the salt-tolerant plants, because crop wild relatives, we have seen many examples that crop wild relatives slowly they are adapted to the natural growing condition, and that is based on the local knowledge or changing of the little bit traits. That's through the mutagenesis or through gene editing. Similarly for the wild species. Or maybe we can identify some salt-tolerant gene and we can transfer from one species to another through tilling, GM or genetic gene editing, etc. So these are the things. But the main thing is that we have this knowledge. We have this knowledge of discovery. And this knowledge is in the academic research institutes like ARIs, that's called Advanced Research Institutes. We have many of this. We have many publications. We have many research grants to that students. And university research institutes are having enough of the academic research. This is well established. The second thing is the delivery also. If you see that many countries, they have the very strong delivery system for the yield, profit, national food security, and there are seed companies, intergovernment organizations, and so many farmers organizations are there. The main thing is that the connection between two is not good. So there is a big gap between the discovery and delivery, and that connection, pre-breeding materials, how it is going to the breeding, particularly the public good breeding, not for profit or maybe CGIR system, how they can be integrated. The discovery and delivery, these are the two far-reach things, but they need to be connected to the translation of that. And this requires a big like a development process. And this is the bottleneck in the salt-tolerant crops. Domestication of the crop wild relatives, actually it is not the new thing. This has been started in 1200 years ago. And if you see that farmers are the first breeder, there used not to be plant breeders 100, 200 years ago. The farmers were the one who took the genetic material from ages to now. That's why you remember in the Plant Protection Variety Act, farmers are exempted because they are the one who are like a custodian of the plant material, who took the plant material from earlier centuries to the now. So when we had this domestication, unfortunately, many of the genes, you can see the yellow and red, and then many of the genes during the selection, Green Revolution era, they were just like lost. And they were made like mainly for the stress tolerance, etc. But they were lost because of the adaptation or selection for the very high yielding traits only. So if you see that Green Revolution era, many of the tall varieties which are less prone to the insect diseases, salinity, they became prone, but they are high yielding. So we lost so many alleles which were very tolerant, which were for the tolerance of the genetic variety or gene as well as the variety. So wild progenitor species, early domestication and modern cultivar. So this one we have good one, but we lost some of the very important alleles. So this is the one which we have to look back and what we lost in that one. So in the domestication. So if you see the there are 4 generations of the breeding. So we say that first generation of breeding is based on the phenotypic selection, which we used to do it in the 60s and 70s. Then second generation breeding, it was from 70s onward. Second or maybe 60s also, when there was a green evolution, recombination breeding and green evolution of the dwarf plants and hybrid. But third generation is on the GM crop, biotechnology based breeding, including GM crops. So this is third generation. And then now last thing is the fourth generation, which is for the gene editing and precision breeding. When we talk about the fourth generation, and you don't see that this is like everywhere is the same. No, at different places, they are already running in the different phases. Some countries are still at the second generation breeding process. Some places there are third generation, some places there are fourth generation already. So they are running simultaneously. It is not like that one is mutually exclusive to the other. So when we talk about the domestication of crop adapted to salt affected lands, so initially people look for the intra-crop variability or intercrop variability. In that they look for the glycophytes. Glycophytes are those which are not as very highly salinity tolerant, and they don't love salt. So we look for the glycophytes with a better salt tolerance, and then use the wild species land races to improve the salinity tolerance of cultivated domesticated genotypes. Say, for example, in the rice, it is Oryza correctata and Khachia in the wheat. So we utilize those races. The Khachia in the wheat, it's a worldwide source for the salinity tolerance in the wheat. This is the only source. So we are utilizing that for the good varieties which are high yielding as well as the salinity tolerant. Then Halophytes for the multiple uses. My colleague, she will explain more on the Halophytes, which are salt-loving plants. And we have facultative Halophytes like Quinoa, which can be grown under the normal condition as well as the salinity condition. Halophytes which need salinity to have the reproductive stage. So when we talk about this thing, and if you see the intercrop variability, there are different crops. And by Maas and Hoffman, that 1977, the classical paper, barley is considered as the most tolerant crop for the salinity. But when we find that not only the barley, because quinoa at that time in that list was not there, and we found that quinoa is much more tolerant. And the good thing with the quinoa is that it has the threshold salinity of around 10 to 12, and it can grow under the normal condition, means non-stress condition, as well as the salinity condition up to the 50 decibel. So this is the one thing which we find that this could be a good crop for the domestication. So climate resilient crops, when we say that we have the different stress environment and different set of suits of the crops for the different stress salinity. Say, for example, if you have the salinity, we are talking about the here in UAE region, it's mostly the saline water because it's a sandy soil. So usually whatever we are giving, it is through the saline water. So because it's a 99% sand, so the cation exchange capacity or water, the salinity holding capacity is very less. The water washes away the salt in case if it is like a fresh water. So we give through the saline water. Any stress treatment is through the saline water. So when there is saline water treatment around 5 to 10 decibel, we can grow very well the permanent barley and sorghum. But when it goes beyond 10 to 20 decibel, we can grow quinoa. Quinoa is one of the crop that's called superfood, and actually it is a native of Southern America, Bolivia, Peru, and that area in the southern Latin America is a native of that one, quinoa. Why we say it's a superfood? Because there are 20 amino acids. In 20 amino acids, our body can prepare 11 amino acids, while 9 has to be replenished from outside in the human diet. Quinoa has all 9 essential amino acids in a significant amount. It has very high protein. It's gluten-free, so that the people with the celiac disease, they can just utilize this one. It has low GI, glycemic index, so then even diabetic people can utilize this quinoa for their food very well, no problem in that way. Its glycemic index is around 50. And it is very much rich in the calcium, iron, potassium, magnesium, and phosphorus, and other grains. This is the list of that. You can find out. Protein, it is more potassium. You can see that potassium is high, and whatever the protein is there, it's gluten-free. And while in the wheat, it's mostly gluten. Similarly, for other traits like phosphorus and iron, this is having much more phosphorus and iron than wheat and rice. And when we talk about the protein, it is the most balanced protein. And when we say the protein, these are the essential amino acids. And always there is a saying that plant proteins are not enough. We have to have the animal proteins to fulfill our essential amino acid requirement. This is not a case for the quinoa. In the quinoa, the lysine, which is the most limiting amino acid in the cereals, it is having almost more than double to the wheat and even rice. And this is this lysine is as much as in any animal protein. So this is one thing which we can say that boast that quinoa is very good for this protein quality also and superfood. And quinoa breaches the boundary. This is the one news in that. On board the International Space Station, Samantha Cristoforetti, astronaut of the European Space Agency, Air Force pilot, and protagonist of second long-duration mission of the Italian Space Agency, has chosen quinoa as one of her bonus food. And why she has chosen as the superfood? Because in the NASA in 1993 technical paper, it says that while no single food can supply all essential life-sustaining nutrients, quinoa comes as close as any other in the plant or animal kingdom. So that's why it is superfood, and it is very good and also very highly salinity tolerant. So now I will give the floor to my colleague, particularly for alternate climate resilient crops or salt-affected environment, which is mostly on the high salinity level.
Yes, so hello everyone. I would like also to thank Bioingene team and Dr. Ajay for the invitation to participate in this exciting webinar. So I'm going to talk about the Halophytes, that is this special and beautiful plants category that can really thrive in very high saline conditions. And it's actually, as Dr. Ajay mentioned, it's a very good pool for plant breeders to consider to fish genes for the plant to increase the salinity tolerance in valuable crops of high economic value. So first of all, it's good to differentiate and to have a distinct and clear idea about the salinity tolerance of the freshwater-based crops compared to the real halophytic crops and halophytic plants that can thrive under high saline conditions. So as we say in saline agriculture, we have a big spectrum of crops and plants to grow. So we can either focus on salt-tolerant varieties of barley. As Dr. Ajay mentioned, barley is one of the top crops that has high salinity tolerance among the freshwater-based crops. So we can have, so actually there are land races or there are varieties of tomato, of barley, of rice, of wheat that are actually salt tolerant. So this is on the one side. And on the other side, we have these highly salt tolerant plants like the halophytes. By the way, halophyte, it's a composite word. It's a Greek word actually. So halo means salt. Phyte means the plant, so plants that can really thrive under very high saline environments. They are loving salt, actually. And I have quinoa in the middle exactly because, as Dr. Ajay also highlighted, Quinoa is a facultative halophyte, so it can grow. There are varieties that can grow under freshwater conditions. However, there are salt-tolerant varieties that can thrive under much higher saline conditions, even higher than the ones that barley can actually grow. So this is actually a figure that clearly demonstrates this distinction between the freshwater-based crops and the salt-tolerant varieties of conventional crops and the halophytes. So this figure actually highlights that as the salinity increases, and especially beyond the 200 millimolars of sodium chloride of salt, this is actually, let's say, the line where we actually categorize the plants as halophytes or non-halophytes or glycophytes. So 200 millimolars of sodium of salt actually coincide with, if you're familiar with ppm, around 12,000 ppm or around 10 decisiemens per meter. So we observe that as the salinity increases, the biomass of the freshwater-based crops decreases. Actually, they die. They cannot grow beyond certain saline conditions. However, the halophytes, the salt-loving plants, can really thrive and grow very well. So this is where actually at ICBA we have capitalized and worked on halophytes as the plants group for us that can really thrive in salt-affected areas. That I'm going to explain you later on about different projects and success stories about halophytes. This is a very good review paper, for you to have an idea, for those of you who want really to explore and want to study or want to run the research or different projects on saline agriculture. This is, I should say, it's a landmark paper where you can delve into the halophytic world, about the success stories, halophytes that can be used for different uses, for phytoremediation, for food, for feed, as timber, as sources of timber or wood. So this is something for your reference to have. And out of this review paper, we have selected specific plants, halophytic plants, that can really have an economic value. And in some parts of the world, actually, these plants are consumed by the local communities. So I will start with this beautiful plant. It's called ice plant. This is the common name. The Latin name is Mesembryanthemum crystallinum. It is a succulent plant that is native to Africa, Sinai, and Southern Europe, and is naturalized in the New World. The plant, as you see, is covered with large bladder cells or water vesicles, reflected in its common names like crystalline. So you will see kind of crystalline glands on top of the leaves of actually around the leaf of the ice plant. Its leaves are edible, succulent, and very tasty and refreshing, I should say. This photo, the main photo, is actually taken from ICBA's saline aquaponics farm, where we are growing ice plant and other halophytic vegetables for food use. The second halophytic vegetable that I'm going to present is the sea beet, Beta maritima. By the way, most of the halophytic plants belong to this family Amaranthaceae, for your reference. So you see from the photo that this resembles quite vividly the spinach, the common spinach that we all know. So the leaves of sea beet have a pleasant texture and taste. They can be used as raw or cooked, and it is commonly known as wild spinach. Sea beet, it is tolerant to very high levels of sodium and of salts. By the way, we've been growing sea beet and ice plant under around 37 decisiemens per meter, which is around 80% of the seawater salinity. Really, I mean, under this type of salinity, only these special group of plants can really grow, the halophytic plants. Another plant that is popular for its food use, common especially in New Zealand. This is why its name, the common name is New Zealand spinach, Tetragonia tetragonioides. It is often cultivated as a leafy vegetable, and it can be pickled. By the way, most of these halophytic plants that can actually forage in the coastal areas in the wild, they are commonly used in pickled kind of products, either as a standalone products or in combination with other local vegetation. And it's very popular for this type of fermentation to be used by the local communities. Tetragonia, this New Zealand spinach, contains oxalates. So mostly these are removed by blanching, and then the leaves can be rinsed in cold water before cooking. Cryphon maritimum or rock samphire, it's a very popular halophytic plant, especially in the Mediterranean region. It has fleshy, divided aromatic leaves. Again, rock samphire can be pickled in hot, salted, spiced vinegar, and the leaves can be used in salads. Also, you can find it, especially in these local areas, in these very localized spots, sold by the local markets in a kind of powder form that can be used as a seasoning. And also, I have to highlight that, and I'm going to show you later on, most of these, I mean, the majority of these halophytic plants, they have really high content in some antioxidants or in amino acids, in valuable minerals and compounds for our health, which actually increases the functionality, especially when we are targeting the food use of these plants. Beyond the halophytic plants that are directed for the food, there are also halophytic plants and crops that can be utilized for feed purpose. So we have Disticles spicata, Sporobolus, Paspalum vaginatum, different type of grasses that can really increase in very high salinities where normal grasses or forages cannot actually grow. In UAE, in the United Arab Emirates and Atikba, we have a long-term, more than 50 years, forage farm where we've been growing these halophytic forages. And you see here the specific species that we've been exploring in terms of growth and yield. So just to give you a yield, a value, regarding the fresh biomass yields range from 75 to 150 tons per hectare per year. And compared to roach grass, which is a highly water-consuming crop, and of course, it grows under very low salinity, or even with fresh water, of course, the yield was 66% higher than roach grass. So we understand under marginal conditions like UAE, where hot and really dry climatic conditions prevail, and of course there is plenty of saline water, such kind of crops really make a successful case study for us to leverage and work and explore more, even for big scale-up projects, of course, up to a certain level and extent. So this type of work has shown that 44% less water used than was used compared to traditional forages. And also, if some of you you are really lucky and visit our research facilities and actually this specific experiment, you will see the differences in the soil where these halophytic forages are actually growing compared to the purely sandy soil that is actually neighboring the other plots. So you will see that these forages, they have stabilized the soil. There is a beautiful microflora and microfauna that has been stabilized throughout these 15 years. So as it's obvious, the forages, it's not only that they are providing full feed, forage for the animals per se, for livestock, but we are also impacting and having beneficial effect at the soil quality and different parameters and its health overall. Of course, I have to highlight before we move on to the next crop that since we are irrigating with high saline water, we have to be cautious about its proper, about the proper management of the saline water under such conditions. Dr. Arke mentioned that in the UAE, the soil texture is purely sand. It's more than 95-97% sand. However, when we move to locations or we move to other marginal environments where there is more clay or silt or loam, then we have to be cautious and mindful about how to manage such high saline water when it is used for irrigation. Another crop, halophytic plant that has huge potential and is really one of the change makers on saline agriculture and has huge potential as a grain crop is Disticlis palmeri, which constitutes another promising wild halophytic grass, and it's under domestication process. So you've seen from this table the different parameters and the comparison between the grains of Disticlis palmeri with quinoa, rice, and durum wheat. You observe the differences, for example, for ADF, for the acid detergent fiber, or for the crude fiber, especially when these are values to valorize a crop, a plant for its forage value, also for the digestible carbohydrates. We also have to highlight that Disticlis palmeri might also, especially for the grains, it is explored even for human consumption. However, as a grass overall, beyond the seeds, but we also for its forage for the biomass value, it's explored for the forage and its value as a feed overall. However, it has a huge potential for both uses. Some other examples of edible halophytes is Arthrocnemum or Arthrocaulon macrostachium, based on an updated name. By the way, currently at ICBA, we've been involved, we are partners for a project, a nature-based solutions project. So we are focusing on the recording and not only recording, but also expanding the coastal marsh, salt marsh vegetation, not only for carbon sequestration purposes, but also how the local communities who are living in coastal areas can actually mildly, in a more mild farming approach, can actually utilize and commercialize these local halophytic species. Even at a seasonal level. For example, Salicornia, the local Salicornia species, Salicornia sinus persica, is growing on a seasonal basis. It has a growth cycle around 9 months, 9-10 months. Arthrocnemum, on the other hand, is perennial. So whenever the season is appropriate, someone can go and forage and pluck the fresh tips. And we are exploring now with in a more multidisciplinary approach how these fresh tips coming from the local salt marsh vegetation to be explored for food or feed. Other edible halophytes are Salsola soda. It's a much domesticated and cultivated plant. Then we have Cacil maritima. It is a succulent, spicy taste used for flavor. And then we have Allium commutatum. It's a wild relative of crops in the Allium group. By the way, its inflorescence looks like Allium species. Allium genus overall. And then I'm going to focus on this was in a nutshell some examples of different halophytic plants that can be used for food, can be used for feed, because these are the main uses that we are targeting from food, feed security, and perspective in marginal, in salt-affected areas. And now the following slides, we're going to narrow down in a specific halophytic plant, Salicornia bigelovi, that we've been investigating and exploring at ICBA from different aspects for the last 10 years. So Salicornia bigelovi, just to inform you, it's a native species that is naturally growing in the southern United States, in the Gulf of California, in the Gulf of Mexico. So you understand that it's a halophytic plant, the Salicornia species that really likes hot and dry climates in terms of the climate. However, of course, it grows in coastal areas and really likes water, really likes growing in saline water. So you see here that the salinities that we've been tested, we have been evaluating this crop at ICBA. It can range from groundwater salinity around 20-25 decisiemens per meter, and it goes even under seawater salinity. So we have tested a Salicornia growing under 55 decisiemens per meter. So the advantages that this Salicornia species has is that it is well adapted in hot and dry conditions. It can be irrigated with high saline water and also with other types of saline water like the aquaculture effluents. Also, we've been tapping into the reject brine from desalination. Probably you have an idea that the desalination technologies and desalination overall is very much abundant in Middle East and North Africa. So tapping into this huge byproduct water source to utilize for agriculture is very much important for the scientists to deep dive and explore the potential. And the third advantage of Salicornia bigelovi is exactly this multi-purpose character and multi-purpose use that nature of the species. So we can have food, we can have feed use, and we can also have other industrial pharmaceutical uses. It has also been explored for the biofuel potential of the seeds, because the seeds have high oil content, which is similar to sunflower oil properties, actually. And there has been some pilot studies conducted about the biofuel and the oil utilization, either for biofuel or even vegetable oil in some cases. So my first slide was actually I showed to you about the distinction between the salt-tolerant crops, the freshwater-based crops where there are some salt-tolerant varieties developed, and on the other side we have the halophytic plants. So if we in an area, in a salt-affected area, I mean, the agronomists or the agricultural practitioners are forced to utilize salt-tolerant varieties, either of carrots, tomatoes, cabbages, lettuce, still these crops are familiar to the local communities and to the local market. So there is no much more work to be done on that side. However, when we are talking about expanding halophytes in a marginal environment or in areas that are really affected by salinity, beyond the agronomic package in terms of management practices, in terms of having the proper germplasm, the proper varieties. We also have to focus on how we can establish a concrete and robust market segment so that these halophytic crops can really have a place and proper positioning in the market, on the shelves, on the shops, wherever the consumers are going to purchase food, for example. So we all have to focus on these different stages and the different stages of the value chain so that we can have in full-fledged the value proposition and proper positioning of the halophytic crop. So starting from the uses. So first of all, when we are targeting to place a halophytic plant or a halophytic or a product that is based on a halophytic plant as ingredient, we have to focus on the use. First of all, what is the use that we are targeting? It's either food, feed, industrial, pharmaceutical. So we have to focus, the primary is the use. Number one. Then we have, based on this, to customize or to improve the variety exactly to satisfy this use. For example, if I'm targeting to have Salicornia bigelovi as a food, as a halophytic crop that is targeted for food use, which means that I want to consume and harvest the fresh tips, then I have to develop a suitable germplasm that, for example, I get more biomass, fresh tips biomass, or I get more uniform plants in terms of height, more bunchy types, as the Dr. Archaean team, they have identified, where we can, with one harvest, we can probably maximize also the yield of the fresh tips for the Salicornia. Then one step further. What is the management practices package? We have presented to you that halophytes can grow under high salinities, but different level of salinities. So, for example, we have the salinity around 20, 25 decimals, which is actually the optimum one for Salicornia growth. However, if we have higher salinities coming from the reject brine from desalination or from seawater, what is exactly the impact of these management practices, irrigation, salinity treatments, even irrigation systems on the yield and the nutritional profile in the end of the fresh tips that we want to harvest to be explored for the food purpose and to be sold for food. And then the nutritional value, of course, it's impacted by all these different approaches, as I mentioned. Then the return on investment. Always there is this question about what are the economic benefits, what is the return on investment, what is the benefit for a farmer when growing this crop. So this is something that we've been exploring from our end after all these different projects implemented. Of course, in theory, the value shows that, for example, Salicornia, because it has currently high market price, we can have a good income for the farmer. However, this has to be translated, as I mentioned before. For example, when we are irrigating a land consecutively with high saline water, what would be the impact, the environmental impact of that on the soil, and how this impacts in the end? Because if the farmer has to deploy some practices to alleviate that salt buildup in the soil, then this also reflects some additional costs that have to be encountered in this ROI, return on investment study process. And then the last point that I mentioned is the market segment. So the market segment is actually show to the consumers how these crops can be utilized for food. What are the different approaches that someone can follow in order to make these to have a good pitching positioning of these halophytic crops in the market, and also to raise awareness of the consumers, of the communities about these halophytic plants. So also please consider that halophytes, especially when we are focusing on marginal areas. So in marginal areas, when we're talking about saline agriculture, about marginality, about salinity that is prevailing in areas, we have to think about from multiple production components, how we can increase the synergies of different production components so that we can maximize the output, which is actually the yield, and also how we can have the output from each production component as input for the next one. This is actually a system that we've been running here for the last 10 years at ICBA. So we started with a saline groundwater. As I mentioned, the salinity is around 20, 25 decisiemens. Probably this number does not say many things to you, but just keep in mind it's 50% of the seawater salinity. So starting with that high salinity, we have the desalination unit that desalinates the saline groundwater. And then, of course, the desalinated, the fresh water is utilized to irrigate freshwater-based crops. And then the reject brine is directed to grow the fish. The fish, they produce waste, okay? Like we know the manure from goats, sheep, from other livestock. So similarly, we adopt the same approach here, and we utilize this waste from the fish as fertilizer for halophytes, for the plants. Of course, since we're talking about high saline water, the focus is halophytes, okay? So with this water, we have been growing Salicornia, we have grown halophytic forages, and quinoa, by the way. Although quinoa, it produces some kind of, we have some yield. However, of course, the yield is very much decreased under this high salinity. Here in these photos, you can see different halophytic vegetables growing in this saline aquaponics format. This is an experiment that we've been currently running this season at ICBA, testing different halophytic species and how the nutritional profile and their growth is affected by different fish biomasses. And also on the last screen and the growth and the yield of the plant. So we have Salicornia bigelovi. This is ice plants, Mesembryanthemum crystallinum, and Beta maritima, the sea beet. As I mentioned, one of the scheme that I showed you earlier about the value proposition of the halophytic crop, that was under a project that we ran in 2020 and 2022. Where we introduced this integrated approach in 8 farms in UAE. And as you see from the groundwater salinities, the groundwater salinity was extremely high. The must component for all 8 farms was to have a desalination unit. And just to give you an idea, the reject brine salinity ranged from around 20, 21 decisiemens till 40 decisiemens. So it's almost very close to seawater salinity. So in 4 farms, we introduced the fish component, and in other 4 farms, we just utilized directly to grow Salicornia. By the way, we grew Salicornia in all 8 farms, trying to apply a contract farming with a food company. So we had the 8 farms on board. We wanted this food company to purchase all the Salicornia produced, which is exactly what happened. And then this company, they created a Salicornia-based burger patty, actually utilizing this Salicornia from the farms. And it was sold in the market for a couple of years. So having this interaction with different culinary professionals, with food companies from food sector, by the way, Dubai and United Arab Emirates gives us this platform for us to synergize and interact with different culinary professionals, having background from international cuisines, from Mediterranean, Mexican, Japanese, Chinese, Arabic cuisine, all these beautiful different fusion of tastes and flavors. So we had a collaboration with different chefs, and they created different products, highlighting and actually revealing the beauty of this, in this case, Salicornia, but I'm sure probably this approach can be applied for other halophytic plants. That Salicornia, probably we have in mind that, okay, absorb the salts, it is salted plant, So this means that we just utilize it for salty dishes or for solid food. However, here with this interaction, we had identified the culinary professionals. They revealed that actually we can utilize Salicornia in smoothies, in juices, in jellies, in marmalades, or even in sweets. Okay, which was not in our spectrum at the beginning. So all these beautiful stories actually demonstrated the high versatility of Salicornia in different uses. However, it's not only the food, and as you know today, we've been focusing on how not only just to have sufficient food for us to survive, especially in the future with all these bad omens about predictions for climate change and the rising of the temperature and whatever, we also have to eat and consume nutritious food. And if we can create such kind of food products that, or for which of which the functionality is further increased, this is a really target for such a food to have in place. And actually, Halophytes, they can really, and based on our recent nutritional studies, can really serve and can really add these functionality elements in the food, exactly because they are growing under stressful conditions, which means that there are some compounds that are developed, they're produced, which can really enhance the functionality character of the food products as ingredients or consumed per se. So our current studies, we are, especially in the nutritional side, we are very much deep diving into how different management practices in terms of salinity. So you see here in the graph, different salinity treatments, different water consumption patterns, high, low. They can really impact the different the minerals composition, antioxidants, amino acids, you name it, whatever. So we are really conducting an in-depth study currently on that. So, for example, you see that the groundwater, which is the optimum salinity for Salicornia bigelovae growth, it produced the highest concentration of flavonoids. And just for your information, flavonoids possess a number of medicinal benefits, including anti-cancer, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and antiviral properties. So if we have ingredients coming from halophytic crops, halophytic plants, that can really leverage the functionality and the nutritional aspects of different food products or of the halophytic plants per se, then really it's a good, a successful case study for us to explore even further. Also currently, and this is a figure coming from a paper that we are going to submit very soon in collaboration with a clinical scientist from the American University in Dubai. In Dubai. Yes. So we've been, again, exploring the comparison between the different vegetative stages and also comparing with freshwater-based crops. So, for example, you see here, this is the first three bars. They refer to Salicornia bigelovae different vegetative stages. So we have the early, middle, and late vegetative stage. And here we have spinach and asparagus. So what the study discovered is that actually at the late vegetative stage, the iron content is really high, and even comparable and a bit higher compared to spinach. And we know that spinach is a very good iron source for humans to consume, exactly because it is rich in this mineral. Likewise, as I mentioned before, in our case, Salicornia bigelovae is an introduced species here in UAE. However, currently, through this NBS project, we are exploring these differences between the introduced and the local one. So this is the Salicornia sinus persica that has been recorded in the coastal areas in UAE, in Umm Al Quwain and Ras Al Khaimah. And also we are exploring the palatability of the local wild species, how this can be actually consumed and can be introduced in the local communities. And by the way, adjacent to Salicornia is Arthrocrinum, this arthrocaulon plant, the other halophytic plant that I showed to you before. So this is perennial, Arthrocrinum is perennial, Salicornia is annual species. So now I give the floor to Dr. Arcade to continue and conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sisi, for highlighting the utilization of the Salicornia or like halophytic species for the nature positive solution. When we talk about that, we always think of the planet. And in this one, I would like to show some of the things. For example, rice is considered as one of the most, like a crop with the most carbon footprints. And it says like 1 kg of rice, if you are producing 4 kg of the carbon dioxide. However, if we talk about this is all plant species, and then the beef, if we talk about the beef, it is more than 15 times more. 1 kg of the beef needs or produce around 60 kg of the carbon dioxide per kilogram of food. So that way, the plant-based foods and nutritional, it is very nutritive also. Plant-based food are very, very good for the nature positive solution. And what we are going, we don't have the Salicornia, etc., because it's already in the infancy. We are going for that. But what are the components like quinoa, cowpea, amaranth, finger millet? They are just producing less than 0.3 kg. So it means 200 times more than 200 times less than the beef, 1 kg of the beef. So we have to work something for the nature positive solution if we have to grow such type of crops. And in this case, you can see the pink bar. Pink bar is for the transport. And in case if we can produce the things at the place where they are consumed, it means you are further reducing the carbon footprints. So this is the one thing just to show that the carbon footprints, why we should go for the local production and why we should go for the crops which are having the low carbon footprint. Say, for example, in this one, 29% land is there, but 71% is ocean. And in this one, 29% land, 71% is the habitable land. In that, out of 71%, 104 million hectares, 51 million hectares is used for the agriculture. And now you can see that agriculture land is having this 51 million kilometer square, only 23% of use for the croppings. So the cropping is utilizing less, while this is more than 4 times more agricultural land is used for the livestock, meat and dairy milling. But contrasting to that, the 82% of the plant-based food comes from the 23% of the crop, while animal livestock-based food, it's only 18%. And if you talk about the protein, because this is the most debatable issue of how we are getting the protein, which is the building block of our muscles and growth. So 82% of plant-based food gives 63% of the plant-based food. So just 2 times than what we are getting from the meat and dairy. So livestock supply 1/3 of the protein for human consumption, but drive approximately 80% of the non-carbon dioxide emission. So you can see that with this message, we should look for the plant-based protein products if we can do that, and if we can do it in the marginal environments, so that this is having the horizontal expansion of the area and we are not replacing like a staple crop. So this is one message. And in this one, the take-home messages are salt-affected areas with different degree of stresses can be brought back to sustainable productivity by cultivating appropriate food and crop fodder crop. So when we talk about that, it means a plant-based nutritive value, plant-based food with a nutritive value should be utilized for the carbon or nature positive solutions. And we should look for more diets which is having the more plant-based production. I'm not telling about that 100% vegetarian, but less meat diet will be good for the nature positive solution. And some salt tolerant crops which are in the process of domestication needs special attention to the value chain development. This is what CC also mentioned. Because if you are developing something and if you don't have the value chain, then it will not go in the market. If it will not go in the market, there will be no taker for that one. So this is a very important issue on the value chain development. So the summary is that there are suitable crops for every kind of environment. You name the environment, there is something to grow over there. And that you have to find out that whether it's utilizable, whether it's important for the food, important for the nutritive food, or important for the feed also. The more food will have to come from marginal areas. This is why I already mentioned, for ever increasing world population because of the less and less arable land. So we have to occupy the marginal land areas which are like remaining barren. We have to go for the horizontal expansion of that one. And then biosaline agriculture release pressure on good quality water. Because if we are utilizing, because good quality water is very less. You know that it's only fraction of the parts of the water in the world is of good quality fresh water. And if we utilizing that for the always for the even other crops, it will not have the good thing to do that. So we can release the pressure on the good quality water and land resources. We can grow the plants with the saline water and salt affected area with the little bit on the high food production on the horizontal expansion. And de-novo domestication of salt-tolerant crops holds significant promise to addressing the challenges posed by soil salinity, especially in the regions where conventional crops struggle to grow due to high stress. So we are not saying that we have to replace the area for the wheat and rice by these halophytic crops, but in those areas where the normal crops, conventional crops cannot grow, they struggle to grow. So this is something like additional expansion on the horizontal basis for the food production. And by harnessing the genetic diversity present in the wild and underutilized plant species, resilient crop varieties can sustainably support agricultural productivity in saline environment, thereby contributing to food security and agriculture sustainability. And that's the way we can go for the nature planet, like a green planet solution. With this, thank you very much. And these are the contact emails in case if you want later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Cecilia. Now there is a few questions I'm already collected. Most of the are based on the health issue, feed and food, because there is 3-4 questions about the health related issues on Halophytes. 1-2 questions are asking about the others project in your lab, like not only the salt, also the heat tolerance and all. And one category of questions is on the sir already covered it. It is the carbon footprinting issue of carbon footprint using to halophyte and others. So we'll come back, and we are waiting for more questions on the YouTube. There is maybe more than 400 plus live viewers are right now in YouTube channel. So we are asking everyone, please put your questions. If your name is different than like sometimes people using their channel name, so please put your real name and your question. So we'll start the discussion session, so it gives our participants more time, because sometimes YouTube is a little bit slower than actual Zoom. So let's start the discussion session. Shoma, could you please start?
Yes, so I have some questions for this discussion session, and this is an open question, and between the two of you, anybody who wants to answer it, you can. And if you have to add, the other one has to add to it, you can do it. Okay, so I will start now. So, what do you find most interesting about working for marginal environments?
I think this is something, when a scientist, what does it need? It needs challenges.
Challenge, exactly.
And the marginal environment is a real challenge. And if you are getting something out of them, you see the normal condition, anybody can do that. But if the marginal environments are there, the challenges are there. And challenges are for salinity, drought, and heat here. And when we are working for those conditions, particularly, they are like, it satisfies our soul that we are working something for the new thing, like where people leave that area. Means like, when people start stopping thinking to grow the crop over there, we start thinking of growing the crop on that one. So it's something very challenging and very interesting. And that way it motivates us also. You want to add?
Yes. For me, I joined ICBA and I came to Dubai 10 years back, okay? And I come from Greece. So Greece, like India, it's a very lush green spot. Mm-hmm. So coming here in a location where there is barren lands and you hardly see any plants or trees around or the lush green that we are very much familiar with, it is a real challenge. But we have to think about that under climate change impact, some areas which, let's say, now they can really, probably they are coping or they are trying somehow to they can manage somehow under climate change impact in the future with these, not that positive projections about the prolonged droughts and prolonged water scarcity that can prevail. We can have such kind of desert patterns coming up in some locations around the world that are not currently facing such kind of marginality issues. So there is this kind of transition from an area where now is having the resources, but probably in the future or is struggling with the resources that they are currently available from water, soil perspective, but in the future they might not be there. So they will convert to marginal. So by working in an environment already from our side, and see what kind of farming schemes, crops can actually grow and translate this into the future or into current marginal areas that are really affected is very much important. Not only from scientific perspective, I should say, but also to make an impact in the world, what kind of solutions we can offer out there for people who are really suffering, farmers, whoever, and they are trying to deal with such kind of challenges.
Uh-huh. All right. So, what are the salt-affected environments and how do they evolve? There's another question.
Actually, the salt-affected environment, when we say salt-affected environments, it's mostly like two types, saline environment and sodic environment. Mm-hmm. In the saline environment, it's mostly because of the sodium is in the soluble form. Chloride and sulfates are the anions. So, but in the sodic one, it is more on the sodium is on the clay micelle. Clay is a negatively charged and sodium is on the top of that. So it's like a different, and these both are different soil type, soil texture. Salinity, it is a diverse type and it is dynamic. Once the water is there, salinity can go down and again it can come up. But in the sodicity, it is the water percolation capacity becomes very low. So it's mostly depending upon what type of the soil you have, and they are because of in the salinity, mostly it is because of the unjudicious use of fresh water. When you are using the water, it also has the salinity. But if you are using an ample amount of water and without any proper drainage, the salinity becomes higher in those areas. So you can see that canal areas, etc., many saline areas come up. While in sodicity, it is mostly because of the weathering of the parental rocks.
What is the distinction between glycophyte and halophyte, and how do they distinguish based on stress adaptation?
So, as I mentioned in the figure that I presented during the presentation, so we have the glycophytes, the freshwater-based plants that really like fresh water, under which they are growing, and then we have the halophytes that they can go beyond 200 millimolars of salt. Actually, that is a kind of let's say
cutoff point.
Yes, cutoff point for the plants to be grouped in these two distinct groups. However, of course, there are overlapping for some plants because the salt tolerant varieties like quinoa. Okay, quinoa is a facultative halophyte. And as Dr. Arke showed in this graph, where there was comparison between quinoa and rice and wheat, quinoa can really tolerate even higher salinity levels compared to barley. Okay, so the glycophytes are the ones who are mainly like living and growing in fresh water, halophytes in saline water. We have this cutoff point of 200 millimolar of salt. And then, of course, there are some salt-tolerant varieties of the freshwater crops that can tolerate even a bit higher than this. But halophytes is really high, very high salinity.
What is your opinion on GM crops, and do you think they have a future in attaining food security?
GM crops, you see, we can't say GM crops as a blanket recommendation. It is case by case basis. So not for everything, but some of the things like golden rice is a GM crop. This is like you can say the oral vaccine because you are getting the vitamin A. Similarly, orange sweet potato. This is GM crop, but it's good. But unnecessarily, sometimes people make that like BT cotton is GM. So they are good, but sometimes unnecessarily people start using the GM crops process even for those traits which are easy to transfer to the marker selection, like saffron. So that is not very good, but particularly the GM crops which are good for the human consumption with the the social aspect in the background, not for the like a fantasy. So it is a case by case. So we cannot say any blanket recommendation for the GM crop, but definitely some of them are very good.
Do biofortified crops have a role in the fight against malnutrition?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I don't have much experience from biofortified crops. Personally, but based on the readings or whatever, of course. What I feel, and it already shows. The coming trends in the food sector is actually how we can enhance the nutritional content of the food that we consume. So if we have a fortified food product, that would be much more impactful for our health, would be much more beneficial. Of course, biofortified crops make sense, especially for areas or for communities that are under marginal conditions or they are really struggling to grow crops. So having such biofortified crops in place, it would really make a good case. And
I can give you two examples of that. Quinoa is one thing which we have, like I mentioned, that a high good quality of protein and then iron is there. But there are the millets. Some of the millets are highly rich in the nutritional profile. Finger millet, it is having around more than 10 times of the calcium than these rice and wheat. So it's something like a calcium tablet. Similarly, the barnyard millet has around 10 times more iron than the rice, and 5 times more than the wheat. So it is also like they are biofortified. So that is very good, particularly for the lactating women or like small children, etc. Because that is automatically replenishing the demand of the iron and calcium in that.
What is your opinion on digital agriculture, and would it be wise to combine artificial intelligence and agriculture?
Digital agriculture and artificial intelligence, actually, remember that when I presented the breeding, first stage, second stage, third stage, fourth stage. So that is good, particularly when we talk about the different stages. So in advanced countries and advanced science, there is a good scope, particularly when we are trying to trace the genes or mine the genes. So then you need the phenotyping. And phenotyping at the large level, very, very large level, extensive level, it's very difficult to do it by human being. So that way, the artificial intelligence and digital agriculture is the one thing which comes to the rescue of the plant and the scientist. The second thing is the precision agriculture. It's good for the saving the water. Why you want to flood that?
And fertilizers.
Fertilizers also, saving the nutrient resources. So only when it is needed, then the precision agriculture will come into the rescue, and then they save the nutrition and the resources of fertilizer and water.
So the next question is on the role of women in agriculture. What are your views on the role of women in agriculture?
So I suppose as a woman, I have to reply this, but I'm really honored to reply this question. So of course, and specifically where smallholder farming is applied, women's role is very pivotal for the farming success and agriculture commodities to be developed and to be available in the market, coming actually from women, because the women, they are, the bosses of the household, so they run the farms beyond running the family, because when they are working, probably they have other kind of activities. So they are mainly the focal points for agriculture, especially in these areas where smallholder farmers actually are lying. So I think if we focus how we can empower these women, how we can educate, train these women in order to be more effective in the farming practices, in the crops, how they can grow these crops, the different, how they can sell even, how they can properly access the markets, that would be very much, I think, beneficial for the farming and for the farming context, especially in such kind of marginal locations.
Yes. So, due to technological advancement and digitalization, many professions are upgrading or changing in the ways in which they work. In that regard, do you see as the future of farmers? I mean, what do you see as the future of farmers from developing countries?
Mhm. Yes, that's a very challenging question, particularly when we talk about the developing country. Because in developed country, definitely they are in the different ball. That is, the farmers in the developed country are different ball game. But the work done by the developing country farmers, they are whole spectrum from very small to marginal to big farmers. So if you talk about those farmers, particularly with digital agriculture, they have to be educated mostly in case if it has to come. But main thing is that the extension agent in the government system. So because remember that even in the like a gap between the research and delivery, there was a big gap in that. So that gap has to be fulfilled to make the digital agriculture more effective and more helpful to the farmers in the developing country.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
yes,
please.
you want to.
Yes, I would like to add that also now, I mean, all of us, even the farmers, we have to admit, even the farmers, even in marginal areas, the farmers, they have access to smartphones, smart applications. So if from, let's say, the researchers from the scientist side, we can develop such kind of useful tools for them to utilize, and so that they can have immediate access and to the information that can be really vital for them to apply proper agricultural practices on the field level, if it is related to saline agriculture, or if it is related to a crop or a soil management or irrigation management, what type of irrigation system for example, it's better to use, or what type of water or irrigation scheduling they have to arrange. All this information, I think, and there are groups around the world who are really focusing on how they can develop more practical tools for the farmer. And I fully agree with Dr. Arke that there is a gap, a huge gap between the scientific knowledge and information that is generated, which is very much valuable to be converted and translated into the actual delivery and the actual implementation on the ground. So if we can somehow bridge this kind of gap with a more easier flow and access to information between the research among the different stages, scientists, researchers, then we have the extension stream, the extension officers arm, technical arm to help, and then the farmers. If we can somehow have a better access and better flow of information from the scientific level to the ground, that would be much more beneficial for the farming communities in the end.
So, according to you, which sectors of plant science research do you think will prosper in the near future?
You can say.
Which sector? Actually, the plant science, particularly now going in the direction of like utilize because we are working on the marginal land.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more on the adaptation side.
Mm.
So plant science, which is having the adapting to the different environment, that's the main thing. People are looking for where we can grow this plant also. So that's the main thing. And then second thing is that nutritional dense. So they want food security plus nutritional security because food security alone doesn't work. And that way, people are looking for the biosynthetic pathway, how we can increase the nutritive value of those plants which can not be grown under the X area, but can we grow that through the utilizing some genes for the
Climate smart crops, yes.
smart crop. So that is the thing. So mostly it is climate smart crop. When we say climate smart crop, climate resilient crop, it is same. How we can grow those crops which are not being grown under those conditions and in the better way with the high nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's now come to for the students who are listening. So how do you collaborate with other researchers, stakeholders, and partners to advance your goals and outcomes?
You can.
Yeah, so at ICBA, I mean, from ICBA side, we've been working with different partners, national organizations, national research, or governmental institutions from different countries, Middle East, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Central Asia, Southeastern Asia, different locations and countries. For development projects, for example, to introduce these crops that we've been evaluating here at ICBA for several years or decades now, and see how these crops they can actually perform in these new locations, in the new environments. After the selection, then we move forward for scaling up those that are really effective and really demonstrate good performance and yield. So the projects also we are working closely with private sector companies, especially when they want to demonstrate their product or technology here at ICBA. So we have a testing platform for them to explore and evaluate their products. Exactly utilizing this marginality dimension that we have here at ICBA. I don't know if
So I have a question which the master degrees or the PhD students, scholars will be interested in. So if they want to build a career similar to yours, what do they have to do? So the question is how you built your career.
See, this is also case by case basis.
Correct. Correct.
So for me, I was fascinated always with the genetics and plant breeding. So I used that stream and then I went into the agriculture research services in India. And then fortunately, I went into the field which is very narrow, salinity tolerance. Very narrow. If you talk about the ICR system, it's only one institute and very narrow field. So at the end of the tunnel, I was not seeing something bigger. But that gave me the blessing in disguise that they found, because when there is a very narrow field, there are not many people working on that one.
Right.
So that initially it was a setback, that why I'm working where not many people are, thinking of that or something. But later on, because of doing the excel in that one, I was headhunted by International Institute. So I think it is a case by case, but I always say that sincerity and hard work, there is no substitute of this one.
Correct. If I may add, and I feel with Dr. RK, it's case by case. And also, this depends on the personal drive on individual basis. For example, Dr. Arcade's career or my career, it's not just a copy paste. I mean, it's to do with the personal growth as well. Dr. Arcade has a vision, specific vision for his life, for his professional life. I have a different vision, probably, for my life and my professional life as well. The point is, for us, and from scientific perspective, especially for the people, for the students, MSc students who want to, for example, to run a PhD in the future, is this a challenge? I mean, always there should be a question, a challenge for us to address and somehow to sort out or to find solutions about. So everything has to come through your inner kind of inquiries about your life and about your professional life. And what if I don't like advices at all, but if I should say something is that for each one of you who are viewing this webinar right now, is follow your instinct. There is no copy paste out there. Follow what really speaks to your heart and what you can be really passionate about. Be passionate. Don't compromise with anything less than that. Find something that can be really passionate and go for it. This is where actually success will come. And of course, hard work and commitment is no doubt, it's the features that really plug into this process. So good luck.
Just want to add that when you make your profession as a passion, so your work will never be a work.
Exactly.
It will always a pleasure.
Exactly.
But if you take the profession as a side thing and passion is something else, then work will become a workload.
Exactly.
Right. So the students are listening and they would now, and they are appreciating the work you have done and the way you have presented. So now they have become your fans. So now they would like to join, if they want to join you. So they would like to know that when you hire a person to work with you or join your team, what qualities do you look for other than academic qualities?
Yeah.
I always see the sincerity and hard work.
Exactly.
You see that knowledge here and there, it's okay for me. Sincerity and hard work, because these are the things which are very rarely you can find.
Exactly.
Knowledge is definitely, if you are having very highly knowledgeable, it's okay if we can find that. But if you have the very highly knowledgeable person but not sincere, not hardworking, then it's of no use. Sincerity and hard work is other than the academic things. This is what I say always. I look for that.
Correct. I fully agree from my end. For me, the personality of a person comes first. And second is, let's say, the skills, because the skills can be developed. Of course, hard work for me also, it's a must component of one, but also the willingness of a person to learn. And specifically when we're talking about research and science, someone has to have this kind of, I call it as a kind of internal worm that never leaves you in peace inside your mind. You're always looking for questions to answer. So if you have this kind of drive and challenge always there, and this kind of inquiry in mind always to trying to satisfy. So these are the qualities for sure that we've been looking for.
I have a question that has been bothering me for quite some time now. So whenever I ask or whenever I hear someone ask students who are in field of science, who are who are yet to get into any degree, like bachelor's or master's. So many of them don't really connect with plant science and they want to get into something else. But many of them say that plant science I don't understand so much, but they don't know the beauty of the plant science and how important it is. So what do you think we should do as we are plant science research loving people? So what should we do so that we can make them understand that you connect with animals more, you connect with cells more, but you don't connect with plants because of this. But when you connect with them, you cannot get yourself out of that connection. it's beautiful. So what do you think we should do to get more students into plant sciences?
I think you see that early tender stage is the high school and intermediate, or you can say the before high school also, 10th standard. If they are, because this is my passion also, and I always say that I will leave my job and then I will try to teach some of the students in the classes just to inculcate the science.
Yes.
Without any money. So that's my sometime. So I always think of that, but I could not do so far, because the main thing is that is a most moldable stage, the high school students. If you inculcate the science in their mind, they will definitely go to that. So that is the most. And unfortunately, what happened in the 10th grade or something, there are so many students, one or two teachers, they don't have the passion to that, they don't teach them.
Or they do not understand.
They do not understand, maybe. So that is the most vulnerable stage. You can mold the people from the good scientist or good person to the bad person. So this is the one which I feel, and I think more on the scientists, etc. The more community lectures will be helpful, like informal community lectures also.
Yeah.
You can.
Yes, and about the sorry about I was about what was the point about the schools? Okay, about interest. There is this kind of inclination, of course, for digital technologies and AI today, no doubt, right? Which means that even the students from the school, from the first grades, they are very much connected with such type of technologies. Sciences overall, compared to other sectors, I should say they have embedded fewer type of fewer modules or fewer AI kind of approaches embedded in their sector. Although there are fields like precision agriculture, like training tools on agriculture that can really be fully embody these AI technologies. However, we have to keep in mind that food is very much important nowadays.
Live without food.
Even not only we cannot live without it. Even the food, to me, the food industry, the food, the agriculture, it is by default one of the top sectors for students, for younger generations to get involved in and really thrive in this type of sector. However, this we need, let's say, brilliant younger minds somehow to see how they can really couple very different, catchy, attractive technologies with what the agriculture can actually offer as a science or as a research platform. But definitely, no doubt, food and feed, of course, and other uses, but mainly food is something that is in the hot, one of the hot topics in international agendas nowadays. So we cannot just ignore what is actually happening out there.
And also, just to add on that one, food, when they are taking that, they should understand that from where it is coming.
Yes.
You see, I can give you one example. My DG from Erie, so he was from USA, and then his wife, when she went to the in the friends of her wife, they were talking. He said, "What do you do? What your husband do?" He said, "He's a rice researcher." She said that, "What is the rice researcher? What type of rice research? You go to the supermarket and you get the rice. That's it."
That's it.
So for them, rice research is nothing. But if you going to the supermarket, they should know that how.
And there is a purely research center dedicated to rice exclusively.
So yes, more awareness, more
Yes.
the beauty of research of in plants and what advancements we have done. Basically, more promotion and
Exactly.
awareness. Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so I think Shubha has collected some questions. Yes. Okay.
Yes, sure. I highlighted them. Please ask only few.
Yes, a few of them are there. So okay, then okay.
And
So,
topic-wise, they are highlighted, and I also posted in Zoom for everyone.
okay, I'll just read them out if it's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the first question here is, will the use of halophytic plants over a period of time compromise human health?
In terms of sodium, compromise
on human health.
in terms
Human
of
health. Will the
sodium of the salt probably that it contains,
yes,
right?
I think
Excuse
yes.
me, so,
But we are not taking
uh,
anything excess sodium.
Yes,
complete the
correct.
four questions.
Yes.
So, ma'am, complete these four questions at a short because these are more similar. Feed.
Okay, I will
food.
just read them all four and then the
No,
answer.
yes,
No.
these four. Then take the question. Read them
Okay.
because
Okay,
four
okay. The
participants
next,
have same question.
okay. Next question is beta meritema safe for human consumption? And then aren't halophytes dangerous for wild animals as forage as they contain a lot of salt and little water? And then what's the palatability and digestibility as a food and feed of halophytes?
Or human.
Okay. So first of all, the halophytes, we've been exploring as either as fresh, to be consumed as fresh, or as ingredients in processed food products. So of course, specifically Salicornia contains salt. It has high sodium content, no doubt about that. But we've been exploring also the sodium consumption currently from the modern world, from the modern from the current generations. Okay, so although the range, I think the threshold is around 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day, which is an adult can consume. This range, this kind of threshold has really increased. It has go up to 5 grams on daily basis for an adult to consume. And especially from the Chinese, from these cultures, they are using high salt content in their diet. So we can assume that the salinity, the sodium, the salt range has really increased for us. That gives us more space for such halophytes to be consumed. On the other side, there is a kind of let's say reference that probably halophytes, they have beneficial, that they can actually benefit. They have health benefits, especially on blood pressure when it comes to sodium, because probably this is a kind of slow release sodium that does not impact our health and blood pressure that much compared to table salt. Regarding the use as forages, mainly whatever reference is published on the halophytic plants to be utilized as feed, normally they recommend a ratio between 25 to 30% when it comes to include these halophytes in the feedstock meal, okay, for the animals to be provided. However, overall, as I mentioned, when we are considering processed food products, this is a different story because we are using the halophytes as ingredients in that case. Okay. Also, we have to think that there are some culinary cooking processes, as we mentioned, blanching or steaming, or just put them in hot water for a few minutes. So all this sodium is, because it's water soluble, it's released. So it does not affect that much our health compared to fresh, to be consumed as fresh. So there are these different approaches for the halophytes consumption beyond its fresh consumption as a food.
Beta maritima. Beta maritima.
Yes, beta maritima, yes, CB.
Safe
There
for
was
human
question safe for human.
Beta maritima for the oxalates.
No, there was one question on the beta maritima. Is it safe
for
for the
human consumption?
The CB, right? Because of the oxalates. There was a highlight there that if we blanch it and then we cool it in water, yes, we can consume it because of the oxalates. They can be released through this blanching technique. cooking technique.
Mhm. So then we have questions like, what will be the performance of salt-tolerant crop irrigated with seawater or sewage, or treated or untreated sewage water? Sewerage. Is it sewage or sewerage? It's written.
Treated wastewater. Seawater, it's very difficult. Only halophyte can sustain.
Not salt tolerant.
Non-salt tolerant plant. It's only halophytes can sustain the seawater. While treated wastewater, it depends upon that what kind of tertiary or secondary or third tertiary or quaternary, what kind of stage is there. Accordingly, we can utilize the water.
Okay. So can halophytes be grown with mushrooms?
With mushrooms. Okay. Actually, we had a request coming from a mushroom company here in UAE about utilizing the leftover, the biomass from halophytes, especially from Salicornia, as mushroom substrate. And it looks, because of the salts that it contains, it might not be a good substrate for mushrooms to grow.
Yeah, I think mushroom needs less salinity.
Less salinity, yes.
And good environment, more humidity.
What is the impact of salt-tolerant crop on the perception of carbon footprint?
This is what I mentioned, that when you are talking about salt-tolerant crop, it is an inbuilt mechanism. So you are utilizing the marginal lands or poor quality lands to grow the food. So it means you are having the less carbon footprint. Otherwise, what will happen if you are taking the salt-sensitive crops and growing somewhere where it cannot be grown? So you have to put something more leaching, more water, more fertilizer, more other problem. So that will be having more carbon footprint. So once you are utilizing the adaptation mechanism, that's called adaptation mechanism, a built-in tolerance to salinity or heat or something, it will reduce the carbon footprint. And this is nature positive. It's helpful for the planet.
Okay. So due to MSL rising the salt, I'm just reading what it is. Due to MSL rise, the salt water move towards the land in coastal delta regions in Tamil Nadu, and it will seriously affect the paddy cultivation. What are the breeding methods used to develop salt tolerance?
Yes, sea level rise is one of the things, and that definitely little bit encroach the area, but you see that this also release some of the area also. And it's not only the sea level rise is reducing the the paddy cultivation.
Yes.
Because in delta region, there is always high tide, low tide, and then there is a water. And in the coastal area, it's always saline soil. So it also having the dynamic state of the salinity. So definitely there could be a footprint on that, but definitely when we are having sea level rise and because of the glacier melting, you will release some of the area in the northern, means like not in the coastal, but little bit upside of the. So that will be, I think, good for that, more food production. But you have to develop some more varieties. So for example, in the rice, there are many varieties which are salt tolerant. So utilize salt tolerant variety and then also use the mitigation act. So because it's not only adaptation, salt tolerant variety, but mitigation, how you manage the varieties during the growth period. So both actions should be taken care of while you are growing the salt tolerant varieties in the delta area.
So then there is one more question. He's writing, sir, I am a resident of coastal region. Saline conditions are there where fertilizers increase solute toxicity, thus salinity. How to develop de-novo domesticated variety to mitigate it?
So what I could understand from the question is because the fertilizer also, they're increasing the salinity in the coastal area, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why I mentioned that proper management is very important. In the cell, you see that in the irrigated agriculture, 80% is the genome contribution, 20% is the management. But in the like a rain-fed lowland or you can say that marginal environment, 50% is the genome contribution, 50% is the management. Okay. So you have to use the appropriate uses of the fertilizer, what time it has to be, what doses, and what time means like when it is to be irrigated, and accordingly you have to put the fertilizer. So there are management actions is very, very important in the rainfed agriculture.
All right. So I think that's all those questions. I don't think, are there any more questions, Shubho? Are you there?
All of them at least. And yes, it's okay. I think
Most
yeah,
of them have been covered.
most
I
of
mean,
them
similar
have
types.
similar
Yes.
types, and few are not exactly today's talk. But we are providing all the question to the speakers, both of them. So yes, there is no questions. Uh, we can conclude it. Sir, thank you. Despite of your health, you stay there and come here. We have completed 2 hours at least.
Yes, exactly.
We're very grateful. Thank you so
And
much.
many people that today is joining is like more than 500 people, I think, lively present. So and many people are excited about the topic of their PhD. They are not thinking about this type of plants. So
We
they
are
are
going to
very,
get an avalanche of requests. I feel that
so
coming
they
from India requests.
yes, and many people are many students are asking about that more informations. So for my personal ends, both of you, I asked one question that what about the genome sequencing of these halophytes? Is this annotate or reference genome is available? Because it is very necessary when we need to isolate some gene or some promoter or transcription factor from there, because I'm working on genetic engineering part. So whenever I got some such type of information, I am always looking for the genomic sources. So is the halophytes are very initial stages on the genome sequencing part, or many genome sequencing informations are available, or where
In
it is available?
in Quinoa, it has been done, and we are trying to develop the Jivas population. We are soon you will find the paper on the Jivas, and also identifying the QTLs. Salicornia, it is in the process, and probably by the within this mid of the 24, you will find that like a Salicornia genome sequence.
Okay, so means it is on track, and
Perfect.
it is expected. It is also expected that after the selections, there will be the next few things, and one of the exploring the genome. And
Yes.
thank you, sir, for both of you. Both of you are thanks, and presentation was so nice, and many appreciations are there. And you can find in the recording sections that all the comments, and we'll collect all questions. We'll provide you the questions, and also provide the whole information about the students, and those are joined today, and those are giving the feedback to your topic. Thanks, both of you, and we
Thank
are
you so
very
much.
glad. We are very glad that we include such type of information in Bioengine, because for before we don't have such webinar on halophytes and salinity itself. I think salinity is the first time we are addressing here, and as you know, it's just few me and my few friends have developed it. So we are trying to bring every organizations, even to the private and government sectors, so it can be a group of plant loving people. And you both of you are a milestone for this, and your talk will be there in YouTube forever from our end, and maybe it will be inspire more and more people. And
Sure.
you will got few mail after that webinar about the start the project, taking the PhD students. It's happened. So it is up to you. It's up to you, sir. सर मिलेंगे जब आप इंडिया आएंगे फिर कभी
Thank you
सर.
very much. Thank you very
Okay.
much. And as I mentioned to you, yesterday night I got like a sickness, but
Yes,
only for this one I came, and now I'm going back.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank
much.
you,
Hope
Dr.
you get
AK,
well
for
soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
We'll stop the live session now, Shubha.
Yes. I'll stop the recording and live sessions on. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.